name's Anne. If those of you who are just joining us, I work for the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. I'm the promotional coordinator, and I've been doing that for a handful of years. You might see me with things like Open Farm Day, our fiber tour and trail. I connect with our partners at tourism. And one opportunity that I've always heard was, could we get somebody here to help us, and you can't answer all my questions in a week, but can you get somebody to help me walk through navigating agritourism on my farm or enhancing that? So we introduced the first ever agritourism course this past year. And we brought along my colleague Chadley here, who comes to us by way of UVM connections with their extension team. And now he's actually our independent consultant who's been our agritourism coach, and he's going to share a little bit of a panel presentation with some case studies for you all to take home. And this will be probably an interactive panel is our thinking and our hope behind that. So we would love to kick this off, and then maybe we'll make some time for question and answer, and then after this session is done, we'll do some one-on-one, deep dives if you need to, like help updating things like your Real Maine profile or connecting with tourism to get updates for that particular profile. That's going to be down in the exhibit booths. But we'll also make sure that since you have made it through this full day, you're going to get one of those agritourism liability signs that you can take home and post. So you did it, but I'm watching you if you leave. So you got to stay. That's your deal, your sweetener. So without further ado, Chadley Hollis is our consultant and leader of this next presentation.
Thank you. So I'll talk more about how I met Anne and how I ended up here. But for now, I just want to talk about the next hour. I'm going to start with a 15-minute presentation, hopefully shorter, about agritourism, what it is, why we do it, and kind of some news updates from projects that I'm involved in with other work that I do around the country and around the world. And so we'll start with that, and then we'll come to this panel here of farmers in Maine that are a part of the cohort that Anne and I have been working with. They've got some specific experiences that I wanted them to share, and my hope is that you'll be inspired to ask them questions about things, connect with them, and then after that we've got Marge Kokeli, who will talk about sort of the regulatory environment with agritourism. There's a lot that's happening in that world. And I'll let her talk about that. So I'm excited. So thank you for joining us. This is just a bird's eye view of what's going on in agritourism. I'm going to introduce myself and the work I do, and then talk about some of that work. But first, I wanted to hear from you. We've done a little bit this morning. We talked about what you do. You're obviously, you have farms. I want to know, who here has animals, or you focus on fruit? So who here is orchard? I know there was some orchards. And then people have animals that they allow visitors to interact with, and okay, kind of. They look at them maybe? Yeah. Okay, yeah. They're out there. We try to, no, that's great. And I know I've heard conversations all morning about what you do, so I've just enjoyed it. So a little bit about me. This is before I had a farm and had a kid. This is me now. And I'm an agritourism, a rural tourism consultant. I met Anne. I ended up here. I met Anne, I guess in 2021. I was working with a project with UVM. It's actually where I met a couple of you. We were doing a project on liability and agritourism in the Northeast, and I drove around Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, a little bit in New York, did some webinars in Pennsylvania, just talking about liability and agritourism. That has turned into a relationship with Anne. We've been trying to support agritourism here in Maine, and it's also turned into large body of work that I'm lucky enough to be involved in. A lot of the cultivating tourism is my consulting firm, I guess, and it's just me and my wife. But I work with universities, nonprofit organizations, for-profit organizations to try to support agritourism development. My background, like I said, I grew up on this is really so you can understand how you can lean on me if you want to. But I grew up on a beef cattle operation. Went into the tourism industry and hospitality. Ran a small DMO, destination marketing organization, for a few years. Lots of other stuff in the tourism sector, and then decided to fully leap back into my passions. Started a dairy with my wife. She was a cheesemaker, we had to close that dairy, and this is how I'm focusing my times now, trying to support y'all. So as you heard, if you were here this morning, a lot of the questions that you'll ask, the most popular answer is, it depends. And I think when you talk about agritourism in particular, what it is depends on who you ask. It depends on if you're asking an insurance agent, they're going to have their own definition. The liability law or the statute that Maine has defines agritourism in a particular way, and each state has their own. There's like 5 states now that don't have an agritourism liability statute, but they all define it in a different way. For example, Vermont passed one in 2021, something like that. And it doesn't include, I'm pretty familiar with that one because I had to drive around talking to people about it, but it doesn't include overnight visitation. That's not agritourism under their law, but it is to a lot of us, right? And so the practical definition is probably different from the legal definition, which is different from any other definition you might hear. But we like to use this framework, which was developed by a team of researchers from Oregon to Vermont to South Carolina, to figure out or to talk about what agritourism is. And I really like it mostly because it can kind of be anything, but really what I like this is on the interior part of that circle, what you see is a core activity. These are all activities that are considered agritourism. And on the outside, you have periphery activities. And so those are things that may not happen on the farm. They may not be directly related to agriculture. And those are often things that people don't consider agritourism. But again, it depends on who you're talking to. So moving into a bit of some of the work that I've been a part of, and I'm going to share this because there's resources that have come out of it. And I want you to know about those resources. So and this is going to be a chronological telling of this work. And so in 2019 to 2020, there was a survey done, about 1,800 responses. This is pre-COVID stuff. But we surveyed producers around the country, analyzed the data to try to understand what's going on. This was really exploratory to try to figure out what the challenges are, what people need help with, where they're succeeding, what types of farms are doing agritourism, that sort of thing. And we learned across the country, you see, we didn't obtain a representative sample around the country, but in certain states we did, like California, Vermont, Oregon, Tennessee, and that's where we had some really strong partners that kind of pushed the survey for us. But we learned that liability insurance, those sorts of things, is one of the primary challenges and things that hold agritourism operators back, and marketing. And those are that work has kind of spun into a lot more work for us, which has been creating resources that try to alleviate some of those challenges. And so soon after that, we decided to take its older data, but it's a larger data set. You're all probably familiar with the NASS Census of Agriculture. I encourage you to fill it out because it allows people like me and my colleagues at the state departments of ag and at universities to take this data and advocate for better support for agritourism, to create programming for it, and to just do things that like this that we're doing. And so with Penn State, Claudia Schmidt, extension professor at Penn State, led this project, and it's actually an ongoing project. But the first output from the project was fact sheets for the U.S. and for each state. We took the NASS Census of Agriculture data and broke it down. Fortunately, we had to do a special request of the data, have them break it down for us in a certain way, and it took a year for us to get the data, but it allowed us to look at direct sales and agritourism and split the two. We like to include direct sales, a farm stand, things like that, in agritourism and in agritourism economic impact. But some people don't. Either way, so we split it up so that you can see the differences. These, according to the National Census of Agriculture, if you don't fill it out, you're not counted, basically. And so according to that, there's 7,600 farms in Maine offering either direct sales or agritourism or both. And I can get this to you some other way if scanning it is not easy, but that is the main fact sheet that's on the Penn State website. I'm happy to email it if we can figure out. Maybe. Oh, actually, I have the attendee list, so maybe we can send this out after the fact. But it's 3 PDFs breaking that down: agritourism only, direct sales only, and both. And so, also, please keep an eye out. With that same project with Penn State, in the next month we're doing a producer survey that's going to sort of emulate the original one from 2019. We're hoping this one will be bigger, and we can again get up-to-date data on agritourism in the U.S. So what we learned from a lot of this is kind of what I've already discussed, is that producers and support professionals, which is your insurance agents, your people like Ann, they need more resources and they need a stronger support system. So we started working on that. In 2022, Vermont hosted the International Workshop on Agritourism, and that was a part of a series of conferences. The next one's in Italy this May, but regardless. That was the conference I was referring to. It was hybrid. We recorded everything. Some of the recordings are poor quality. What do you do? They're on YouTube for your viewing. So that, again, I'll send this out so you don't have to scan it if you don't want to. But this QR code brings you to the YouTube page where all these videos are. So it's everything from researchers. There was academics there talking about their agritourism projects, case studies, things like that. But there was also farmers there talking about new business opportunities and marketing and different things like that. So it was a really sort of holistic conference. And as a result of that, in 2023, this past year, we launched the Global Agritourism Network. And this is, for better or worse, where I spend a lot of my time as well, trying to build up this network. We've got so far, and I mean global when I say that, this is a map that I pulled the other day from our registration list. We've got 85 countries represented and over 600 people. And we just launched in April, and we really haven't promoted. All we're doing right now is meeting to try to figure out what we want to do. It's a informal organization, but we're trying to formalize. We're probably going to incorporate somewhere, trying to figure that out. But either way, the goal is to support agritourism globally from a policy standpoint, from a resources standpoint and business development, things like that, to really try to help people around the world not only understand the importance of agritourism and the value that it brings to rural areas and even to urban areas in some cases, and just to our communities in general. And so I encourage you, again, I'll send this out, but I encourage you to join the network. You don't get very many emails, but if you want to be really involved, you can be, and there's a space for that. As much involvement as you want to. And we have recorded launch. Then whenever we launch the network, and we have meetings and webinars constantly that we record and put on our YouTube, and so it's all available. And that on the right-hand side is a Google form for you to sign up. And so, what about now? That was 2023. Now what are we doing? One of the main things that I'm doing is working with the Agricultural Marketing Resource Center that's based at Iowa State. We have funding from the USDA, working with them to try to redo their agritourism website. They have an agritourism website. This is it. Let's see if it'll let me play it. And I like to play this because it's not, I mean, I hope no one knows anyone at Agmar, but it's not that great of a site. Like, it's just hard to navigate. It's just a list of text. And that's most agritourism resources. And so we're trying to avoid that. We're trying to give you better information that's easy to access, that you can download, that people like Ann can download and use in your communities to share, to build, build agritourism up around the country. Anyways, the goal of this is to build a library of resources, and most importantly, to have a place where people like Ann, extension providers, can go and get resources for you. And then what else about 2024 is what we're doing now. This is the inaugural Maine Agritourism Summit. We hope that it will continue year after year and continue to grow and change and evolve. And what we're trying to do here, and I talk about all this global work, this global agritourism network, and all these other universities and all of that, and that's really important. But at the end of the day, if you don't have regional like hubs, regional networks, either state-based or even product-based, whatever it is, if we don't have those smaller connections that are happening, it won't work. It's all about facilitating that, and so that's what we're doing here. So that's it. This is me and Benjamin, my son. That's my email. Always feel free to reach out. A lot of you know how to contact me, or some of you, I guess. If you ever have a question, you want to be involved in something, let me know. I'll connect you with someone, or I'll try to help you myself. So with that, I want to move on to the panel. So what we have here is a panel of your peers. We've got Christine in the middle. We've got Carrie on the end here, and it's out of order, but and Jesse on that end. So I guess I will go ahead and start I will ask them a question. They will answer that question, and then what we'll do is, and then we'll go into Marge and have her do a short presentation, and then I kind of want to like open it up just for discussion in general. So if you have a question, write it down. I would like to try to keep it towards the end if possible, and just try to, I don't know, facilitate discussion, do whatever. There's an end time on there, but you don't have to pay attention to that. We're flexible. I've got nowhere to go, so maybe you do. Okay, so Carrie, she's with Blenheim. Is that how you say it? Blenheim? Blenheim Park, Maine. In Bremen. What is it? Bremen. Is it Bremen? I've been saying it wrong this whole time. So you have a unique product, cherries, that many said would be hard for you to grow and develop in Maine. It has gone well so far. So I want you to talk about how you tied the product so well into your branding and your on-farm experience. Yeah. You want to move up here, or you want to sit down?
I thought you would. No, yeah,
It's
bring
up
it
to
down
you.
here. This is great. I'd rather sit. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, Chadley. I'd just like to start by saying I am available for a panel in Italy if you have need. Anytime. Put my name down. So I am new to farming, relatively new. I have a background in business, so I have done many years of business consulting and coaching and marketing and product development. So I came to farming with that in mind. So I'm unique and I guess lucky or not lucky, depending on how you look at it, in that I came with a very clear vision of what I wanted to do when I built my farm. And we've been in Maine for 7 years now, and the first spring after arriving, I established my cherry orchard. We put in 200 sour cherry trees as bare root stock, and 6 years later, we are harvesting. This year we harvested a half ton. It was a pretty poor year because of all the rain, but we should be looking to bring about between 1 and 2 tons of cherries a year off our 1 acre plot. Now we're farming a very cold hardy variety out of Canada. So this year, despite the late frost, we still had a harvest, which was wonderful. So I approached it from the very beginning, knowing that I wanted to build an agritourism-based business and that I would be developing a value-added product line of products. It was never about selling the produce for me. And originally I had wanted to put in grapes, but then I learned, I bought a property in a dry town, and I can tell you, if my Australians knew about that, I'd be excommunicated for sure. But I'll also explain how the dry town has actually come to be a big part of my marketing and my branding and the positioning. So grapes were not a viable option for the amount of land I had. And I knew that as a person who enjoyed a cocktail, there were no really good high-end cocktail cherries available that were produced in the United States. So I decided that I would explore cherries as an option. Everybody I spoke to said, not a viable crop for Maine. You won't succeed. And I just need to find some wood to knock on, because 6 years later we're still here and the orchard is going strong. I researched deeply and found this variety out of Canada that was good and cold hardy. And the other challenge that I face is I do follow organic practices, because we're surrounded by lakes and we have a lot of wetland on our property, and that adds another layer of challenge. So all of the great resources available through the state departments, I have leaned on at various times. And all of them have said to me, Kerry, you're unique in our farming group, because normally we have to teach farmers how to market. You've got all that sorted, and we have to teach you how to farm. And so that's an ongoing process. So our property was established in 1924. A little building was moved onto the property and sat right in the lake. Back then you could board up a section of a beautiful pristine Maine lake and pour a concrete slab into it and build a cottage on it. And so the words grandfathered in are beautiful words. And I decided that we would establish our branding based on that building, the property being established then. And I love the Art Deco, Art Nouveau era. So everything that we do on the property now is keyed off 1924. And that extends to our events. It extends to our branding, to all of our label design, our postcards. Everything that we do is kind of set from when the property was first inhabited, I suppose. The events we run are, a 1920s lawn party that people come dressed in their attire, 20s attire, and picnic on the grounds. In addition to so in 2018 we established the sour cherries, and we had another block of land, kind of a swamp. It wasn't wetland, but it wasn't anything else as well, right next to it. And it was kind of in between the driveway and the cherry orchard. And I knew that in order to be able to bring people onto the property, I needed to do something with that patch of wet land that wasn't actually wetland, if there's anyone from the EPA in here. No. I did work with the EPA in doing this. So we brought in 20 tons of soil starting in 2021, and we dug a couple of ponds, and we established a second orchard, which is ornamental cherry blossoms. And I can tell you, people were interested in the fact that I'm farming cherries, but the minute I told them I'm also I'm farming cherry blossoms, as in Japanese cherry blossoms, I cannot tell you the number of emails I received from people saying, can I come and have my photos taken in the cherry blossoms? Can we come and picnic under the cherry blossoms? And so that really was a perfect addition. So I can still say I'm a cherry farmer all the way around. And our goal is, we ran our first series of hanami, which is a Japanese term for picnicking under the cherry blossoms, picnics this year. A lot of our products are keyed off that as well. So, we are doing 2 lines of products. We have food and beverage, which is primarily using the cherries. And then we have bath and body, which is primarily using the cherry blossoms. So as the trees mature, we will also farm the blossoms. In Japan, for centuries, they've been, you pick the blossom, you'll pickle it in an ume vinegar or a plum vinegar, preserve it in salt, and then it is used in teas, in cooking, or in Western countries, it's much more popular to rinse the salt off and stick it in a glass of champagne, and then the flower opens up really beautifully. So we're farming both flowers and fruit. And this year we really ramped up our events. And despite the late freeze, which took out all of our ornamental cherry blossoms, we did manage to have 6 flowers. And we ran 2 series of picnics, hanami picnics. So we just pivoted, there were no flowers. I was like, what do I do? Do I cancel? I just decorated. I moved the picnic from the orchard up into my property, which fortunately sits on a lake. The picture you saw earlier is actually our property. And then every tree that I have up there, I hung pink lanterns from, and I just made it feel as magical. I had bubble machines blowing, and we had the beautiful Japanese music playing over the whole sort of area. And I just made it as magical as I could. And when we did the orchard tour, which is always a part of our events, I made a point to take them to the tree that had 6 blossoms and say, look, you cannot say that I did not show you cherry blossoms. Everyone loved it. We had terrific feedback. They thought it was charming. And I will say that starting each of these events with an orchard tour is a really wonderful way to connect with your audience or with your customer base as well, because they become really connected to when you go and explain your farming methods and why I chose to put clover in instead of grass. And they feel as though they've come away having learned something and learning something about you. They are much more likely to go and talk about you, and that's ultimately one of our greatest marketing tools. Did I address what you were asking, Chadley?
Yeah.
Okay, and then some, I'm sure.
So I wondered, can you hear me in this? Yeah, okay, so I just also wanted to show your products.
If you go to
which
the store.
was a part of the, is it in store?
Store, yeah.
Store. And so, the branding goes,
Just click into food and beverage, that's probably the easiest one.
the branding goes from the farm, the trees themselves, this 1924 theme. I just thought it was such a good way to tie in the story of the farm, the place, the product, and everything into it, the cherry blossoms, everything. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and even to the point of fitting out my farm store. Everything, all of the fixtures are, and I am the greatest marketplace shopper you will ever find. If you're in need of anything, just let me know. I can find it for you at $200 or less. I have fitted out the entire store with old apothecary cabinetry, and we have an old wooden canoe hanging from the ceiling, and there is nothing in there, with the exception of some cherry neon lights, which my team hate with a passion because they're not on brand, but I love them. Everything is 1920s, and when you step into the store, it feels as though you've taken a step back in time. I have an old-timey cash register that you have to push the button and it goes bing, and it doesn't work. I mean, it opens, so I use that to give every customer a little crane, a little paper crane, a Japanese folded paper crane for good fortune as they exit the store. And so, the whole idea is to create this experience, because there are only 2 ways you can differentiate yourself, really. One is through the product you're offering, or the other is through the experience that you give. And so, I'm trying very hard to hit both of those points, to differentiate on those points.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And thank you, Carrie.
Yeah.
And I think, my goal was not to say that you should do what she's doing, but to do it with intention. Whatever it is that you're doing, think about it in a way, and the experience that you want people to have, the experience that you want to be involved in, which is really important, and create it. And so next, thank you again for that. And next we have Christine.
Sure.
Oh, yes.
I maybe missed it, but how did the dry community fit in?
Oh, no. You didn't
The
listen.
Prohibition, 1924.
Sorry, the 1920s events that we run, I call them the Prohibition Tipple, and I do sell hip flasks in the store, and I'll just leave it at that.
So it was full on prohibition. Let's take something that you love, which is cocktails,
I mean,
and not able to sell them.
If you can't beat 'em, join 'em, right?
Yeah.
We sell infusion kits. We sell everything. Sorry, Chadley. We sell everything but the booze, essentially. So we sell infusion kits, and so I've just figured out a way that we can, we can still have some fun. There's a clock inside the store that is set to 5 o'clock always, and a sign that says closed, for violation of the prohibition laws. And so we've had a bit of fun with it.
Yeah, a weird infusion of Jimmy Buffett into the 1924
Rest in
prohibition.
peace.
So next we have Christine, who is with Morning Glory Farm. I wanted her to join us on this panel because I visited her. She was one of the farms I visited in my first, in that liability thing I mentioned years ago. I've just always been captivated with how she ties in the community. And I tried to pick different types of farms with different capacities and different things. And Christine's a great example of that. So I think it's a great example, your farm is, for agritourism to serve as a space for people to gather. And so I wanted to ask you about how you engaged your community so well with your farm and your on-farm experience.
Thank you. Actually, if you have our mission statement, that would be helpful. There we go. So I come to farming from a background of being an educator. I worked for a number of years in outdoor education as an Outward Bound instructor, so I'm very much focused on teaching and working with people in community. And part of our mission statement is not only about growing produce, vegetables, dairy, eggs, flowers, but it's also to provide education to people of all ages. So that was part of how my farm started. And we are a very diverse farm. I think it's interesting going from like cherry blossoms to I have cows, goats, sheep, chickens. I do pasture raised meat birds. And probably the only thing on our farm that actually makes money is we do a small batch commercial hot sauce that we sell in stores in the Bethel area. I'm from Western Maine, as well as a couple stores in Portland and New Hampshire, as well as online. So we do the value added product as a way of, I like to think of it as financing my educational goals that I'm trying to achieve. So we have a number of collaborations. I work closely with some schools in our area. We've had a independent middle school come to our farm once a month for a year to see all the stages that a farm will go through during a year. We've had a long relationship with Boston College. Their sustainability club comes twice a year for workshops and volunteering. I'm very involved with a program called WOOF, which is Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms. So I always have, usually they're young people, volunteering, living on my farm as a room and board education exchange. And so that's a big focus, is providing education. I really want people to learn about why we farm organically, about knowing your farmer, how important it is to eat locally, all of those things. As I'm really trying to spread the word. And then the other part of what I do is a ton of collaboration. So I run a small CSA, have about 20 members, but I also offer them the opportunity to buy bread from a local baker who will bring the bread, and it goes out on the same day as my CSA. I partner with another person in town who is a coffee roaster. So you can pick up your vegetables, your coffee, your bread. Another person has their maple syrup for sale at my farm. And my daughter is a flower farmer. So it's this really lovely collaboration of people bringing things all to the same place. I like to think of it as like a nice one-stop shopping. And the new sort of, we've had this farm for almost 20 years, and I've been sort of in business for about 10. About 3 years ago, we built a Cobb wood-fired pizza oven. A friend of ours built it, and we did it in collaboration with MOFGA. So it was a workshop, and people came and we built the oven, and they learned how to build an oven. I ended up with the oven. And so now we do a lot of community building events around food. So we'll be able to go out to the garden. We always use Maine grains flour. I was very happy to see them downstairs. And everything else is from the farm. I usually make my own cheese, and we will make pizza. And people come from the community. They'll invite friends. I have school groups come. And it's just a lovely, it's like gathering around the hearth. You know, so this pizza oven has just become, I call it the heart of my farm. And then the other thing I want to do in terms of agritourism with that pizza oven is move into hosting, I don't know if I could pull it off weekly, but at least a monthly pizza dinner to actually make money off the, and I don't know, I think you were all here when people were talking about licensing and insuring, and I know I have some work to do before that's going to happen, but it's just been wonderful. And we first finished the oven sort of at the end of coming out of COVID hiding. And it was a lovely opportunity for people to come together, to be outside. You know, we were all outside under a tent, but we were able to still come together in community. And so I feel super grateful to be able to offer my farm, my space to people to be together and to eat, and also learn about local food at the same time.
Thank you, Christine.
Yeah.
And I think that just shows, and you know, this is not, I can think of several farms off the top of my head that do similar things, that involve the community, and they accept and own the fact that they can't do it alone. That your community is there to help, in whether it's an organization or a group of people or whatever it is. They probably want you to do well because they enjoy their CSA, or they enjoy just driving by and honking at you, or whatever it is, you know, like just knowing that you're there and your farm is there, your employees are there, or whatever it is, lean on them, right? And I think Christine has done a really good job of, you know, they're getting something out of it too. While she gets a pizza oven, you know, now they have this place in Bethel that they can go and make pizzas every month, or hopefully soon.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, thank you for that.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And so next we have Jessie. I'm not going to try to say your last name. You can say it if you want.
It's all right.
It's
not my name.
Can you say it real quick?
Shimoleski.
Chmielewski. Okay. Like Polish?
Yeah, but my maiden name is 5 letters, so
Okay,
I
all right.
inherited it. Yeah, married into that.
So Jessie Wayne Farm is her farm with her and her family. I wanted her here today because she's from Jessie Wayne Farm, but she's currently going through a pretty significant transition. Her farm is basically completely changing, and location, place, everything. The business that she has is changing. And so I wanted her to kind of talk about those experiences. So she's taking on a long-standing orchard from an existing, a retiring farmer. The new venture is larger, from what I understand,
Oh, it's way larger. now.
and presents a lot of different challenges than what you're currently doing.
Mhm.
So what are some of those major considerations and challenges that you've made and had to make as you make this transition?
Yeah, so this has been a very long and insane process. So I'm going to try to give some history so it makes sense. And if you have further questions for clarification, just ask me later. So originally, when I met my husband, basically like, oh, okay, we like each other, and we decided what we're going to do. He has a good job, so we'll just start our farm. And we did, and we started off basically his family owns a farm, and and he's a part owner of their maple syrup production. So that's how we started, was selling their maple syrup products. And from the very beginning, we wanted to have an orchard. There's a very big limiting factor, and that is that you actually need land to own, because orchard crops take a long time. And we didn't have that. So we went on this very long search, and this is Kelly's Orchard is the orchard we're buying, and this is the second kind of process we have gone through to this extent, and it's been night and day that this is just like the right thing to do. We originally, most recently, we were extremely diversified, only growing on under an acre. Everything from very diverse vegetables, cut flowers. We do a lot of cut flowers, and then some value-added products, mushrooms, just a bunch of random things. Essentially, just trying to figure out where we fit in and what we can do with our limited resources of land. And now that we have the orchard, we're switching back to our original plan of managing an orchard and continuing our cut flower business in conjunction, as well as some little bit of the stuff we have kept along the way. So the biggest issues was unlike you. I did not come from a business background, so those are the biggest issues that we have, is figuring out all the business logistics that come with such a complex transition of buying not just a farm, but we're buying an existing business and everything that goes around that, from insurance, employees, markets, all of that. So the finances, the taxes, the insurance, we were just having a discussion the other day about, do we keep his insurance? Do we switch to ours? So we're doing a cost comparison to figure that out. And the H2A workers, he has H2A workers that have been working on his farm for some up to 40 years. And I hope when I'm 40 years in, I can be moving like that and have the knowledge that they do. They are they're invaluable. We can't have a farm without them. So learning all of the framework around that is very new to me. It's a lot of paperwork that I have to learn as well. And then, of course, he's had some of his own employees, and we have some of our own employees. And so figuring out where everyone fits into the puzzle of merging these two businesses and how that's going to work is a process, as well as we're going to keep him around because we need all of his knowledge and skills that he possesses. So figuring out how that really is going to work throughout this season and seasons to come. Markets, we are lucky that, I should say, that our farm in West Newfield and Acton are towns touch lines. So he's 10 minutes from us. He's a mile from our daycare. We all know the same people. Our customer bases are basically the same. So it's not like a huge move that way, but we did have a lot of the same farmers markets. So figuring out what farmers markets we're doing this year was a big thing and is still a big discussion, as obviously we cannot do 10 markets a season. And then, of course, we were supposed to close in November, but as things go with businesses, it has been prolonged. And now that presents another challenges, as far as now we're getting into our next growing season and payroll. And so figuring out how we're going to make that work, as our transition of closing is already, pruning starts next month. And so we got a lot of figure, how are we going to keep this moving seamlessly so that everyone is still benefiting and no one's losing. I think that's all I had to say.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to see this transition mid-season, basically. Like she's running her existing business, but also trying to transition into a new one. The trees don't stop growing, right? And the fruit's coming. So you got to make sure you can't lose that. And I've just been impressed too with the way that we talked about challenges, but also like you're working on a way to combine both the businesses in an event.
I don't think I mentioned. So we probably the biggest thing that I've always done is we do tulips, and we've done that from the beginning. So last season we planted 100,000 bulbs at the orchard. And so now that's our kind of our big welcoming event, is our Tulip and Blossom Festival, which is similar to what you were saying. Apples and peaches will be in bloom at the same time as the tulips. So we're really happy to be able to combine both of those things from his business and from ours to really make something happen as like a welcome to our farm, which was another whole thing, was like, we have to put the tulips in the ground now. And I order my tulips in January. So it was like a huge deal. That we're going on over a year of this transition process, I should mention.
And you've learned a lot.
And we've learned a lot.
Well, thank you, Jesse.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. And so again, write down your questions if you have them, because I want to move into Marge Kilkelly. Marge I actually met Marge through her involvement with the Global Agritourism Network. She's trying to offer her knowledge as much as she can. Marge and her husband own and operate Dragonfly Cove Farm, where they raise cashmere goats, poultry, and pigs. But most importantly, and also relevant to this, Marge served in the Maine legislature for 16 years, 10 in the House and 6 in the Senate. She left the legislature in 2002 to take a position with Council of State Governments. There was more after that. I didn't copy it all down, but needless to say, Marge is and has been heavily involved in lawmaking, understanding regulations, how that fits. And there's a growing national conversation, some of which I've alluded to, with agritourism at a national level. But then there's also this, I don't want to say it's a problem, but the reality is that much of the regulation you deal with is at the local level. And so there's this large mix of things that you may or may not know about. So I was hoping Marge could kind of fill us in more on that whole ecosystem, I guess we can call it. So the floor is yours, Marge. And yeah, do you need, do you have presentation?
Yeah, I'm just going to talk. You told me I only had 12 minutes.
Yeah, I know. But
My husband says I can't introduce myself in less than 15 minutes. So you're going to have to tolerate the fact that I'm speaking from notes, which I don't usually do, but I'm trying to be a good doobie here in terms of the amount of time that I was allocated. But if you ask questions, I can stay longer. So I am Marge Kilkelly. I have been working on rural advocacy issues for well over 40 years. My background is in community economic development. My passion has always been rural, and I have spent most of my professional career working in those issues. So I was in the legislature. I chaired the Inland Fish and Wildlife Committee, the Agriculture Committee. I wrote the bill that created the state meat inspection program, also the Board of Agriculture, and a number of other pieces of legislation I think are really important for Maine agriculture. And I also, one of the other things that I did was to create a group called the Northeast States Association for Ag Stewardship. And that was when I was the Senate chair, it occurred to me that the Farm Bill was happening and I didn't know anything about farm bills and that I probably should. So a group of us from the Northeast legislators got together and found some money somewhere, and we hired a lobbyist and started working farm bills because the Northeast up until that point basically read about farm policy in the paper. And we felt that it was time for that to stop. So, and there have been lots of other things I did. So around agritourism, in 1999, I was an Eisenhower Fellow in Central Europe. And my study was to look at how the countries that were acceding to the EU were trying to stabilize their rural economy. And one EU conference that I attended focused on Austria, which at that point was a model of stabilizing their economy to reduce migration from rural areas to cities. And part of what they talked about was the importance of agritourism. What most interested me was how they had seamlessly integrated agritourism into both hospitality and agriculture. It wasn't an add-on. It wasn't considered something weird. It was part of what your farm did, and it fit into the hospitality sector as well. As a matter of course, when people would build a new farmhouse or put an addition on, they would add 1 or 2 guest rooms, or they would make sure that their dining room was sufficient so they could host people in their dining room. And they also made sure that they had opportunities for folks who may be skiing all day to make bread at night or to watch them milk the goats or cows or make cheese or whatever they did. So they were creating those experiences. When I came back to the States and continued my look at agritourism, the differences were very apparent. For one thing, at that time, agritourism in the US was sometimes seen as the last gasp effort to save the farm and bring in much needed revenue. That also often meant that the infrastructure and the necessary capital to start this new venture was lacking, and the added stress often took people to the breaking point even faster than they were going down in terms of their agriculture. People also discovered that day-to-day farming was very different than answering questions. So one of our favorite questions on our farm came from a 7-year-old girl who said, "Why is that goat jumping on that other goat?" Her mother was horrified. We talked about it. Another challenge in the US was that neither side, hospitality or agriculture, the trade groups and the support systems for hospitality and agriculture didn't really understand agritourism. And they were perplexed and confused. Somehow it wasn't real hospitality, but it wasn't real agriculture, and it didn't fit any of those support models. Further, policymakers and regulators were similarly confused. The body of law and regulation around hospitality and farming did not fit agritourism, and it made it even more difficult. There are 3 points that I want to make in the 12 minutes that I was allocated. I want to talk about how we can improve the legal framework and regulatory structure for agritourism. First, it's education. Agritourism is education for the public, and that is critically important to maintaining agriculture in this country. But education and relationship with policymakers, staff, and regulators is also critical. One of the things that I suggest is for you invite elected folks, staff, and regulators to your farm for a special open house. Show them what you do. Talk about your plans for the future. Talk about jobs, taxes, and revenue. We as rural people have got to do a better job translating what we do and what we know is going on into urban speak. And urban speak is jobs, taxes, revenue. And if we don't do that, nobody's going to do it, because people drive by our farms and say, "Isn't that cute? Isn't that nice?" And they have no idea that some of those farms might be the largest employer in their town. So we have to do that kind of education. And we need to do it in the same way that a Main Street business would. If a Main Street business invites folks in for an open house, you can bet they talk about how many people they employ, they talk about how much they sell, how they support other businesses in their community. We have to do the same. Inviting those folks in before you have a direct ask or a crisis develops a relationship. And it allows you to reach out when you do have an issue and have them recall the visit. You know the barn I showed you that needs an upgrade so that we can expand? Well, if you support XYZ bond issue, we may have a chance to get that. That gives those people a chance of understanding, because they were there, understanding what it is you're asking for. The second piece of regulatory, the second regulatory issue is to know exactly what the barrier is to your project and what level of government is involved. I've served in local government as a selectman, state government as a legislator. I've worked regionally, and I've worked on the Hill. I can't begin to tell you the number of times when I was in the legislature, people would call me about an issue in their local town. I won't touch those with a 10-foot pole. That's up to the town. That's not up to the state. When I was in DC, people would have an issue with the state and they would call, "What are you going to do about this?" Nothing, because that's not what we do. You need to call somebody else. People would get very perplexed about that, obviously, but it's true. And you don't want government serving in a hierarchical capacity. You want government to have its place, its role, and its responsibility. You are going to spend a lot of time dealing with these barriers if you start by researching where the issue is and where the answer lies. You're going to save yourself a lot of time. Finally, I want to touch on how we can improve communication and the environment for agritourism. H.R. 5203, the Agritourism Act, would create an Office of Agritourism at the Department of Agriculture. And we can send you this information. That framework will improve the status of agritourism. It will make it more real. USDA has done a really good job on agritourism, but having an office will make a significant difference. There's a hope that this legislation can be folded into the Farm Bill, and given all of the delays we've seen, there's actually still time to do that. Who knew in January we'd say that? Sometimes you never know. But it really is important. To support this or anything else, you must communicate effectively. So what does that mean? I can tell you that form emails, form postcards, and form letters that you add your name to are not terribly effective. They get counted, but it's a yawn. When I was working in Senator King's office in DC, we would get about 5,000 contacts a week. And so when you get 5,000 contacts a week and you've gotten, 300 that all are just the same thing, it's like, well, 300 said this. A short email, card, letter, or anything else that just says support or oppose XYZ is also not really helpful. If I've gotten 100 letters or calls in support of something and I get a note from you that says oppose it, my first question is why? What's the problem? You need to explain it. You need to say, please vote against this bill. If it passes, my farm is going to lose XYZ. I won't be able to continue to grow something. I may need to lay some staff off. It will reduce my income because whatever the issue is, explain it. One of the things on this agritourism bill that I was asked to do, I've got template letters drafted to the House and Senate. And in these letters, it again, one page, it's not too long, but it says, this is why agritourism is important. On my farm ranch business, agritourism generates X percentage of my revenue. It allows us to employ X number of people. It helps us to support local businesses. That kind of information is critical. I could go on, but they won't let me. I think I'm over my 12 minutes anyway. So I have 3 points. Develop a relationship with policymakers and regulators. Research the barrier that is frustrating your business and know who can address it and direct your concerns there. Communicate with information and facts about your business. Happy to answer any other questions now or email. And I would be remiss if I didn't say, oh, and check out Nourishing Maine, which is our latest agritourism adventure on our farm, which is a cooking show about Maine foods. And there's some stuff up back about it, and we hope you'll take a look. Thanks.
I'm pulling up Nourishing Maine's YouTube page. Yeah, so anyways, fun videos. She did one with the potato, what's the name of the group? The official name, the potato board?
Tim Hobbs, who used to be the deputy director of the Maine Potato Board, came on, and we made mashed potato sundaes and mashed potato salad, which I was introduced to when I was in the legislature, and it is spectacular.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. Questions, comments? Anything else from anyone? I'll bring this. Any questions, comments? Don't make me walk out here and not say something. Anything about any of the topics? You're thinking it, yeah.
Well, I'm curious. I don't think I need that. Oh, for recording. I'm curious because we're all trying to make a living at this, right? And we're all finding this is the added income, much to all of our chagrin, much like Marge just said. How are people making money? Is it farm store? Is it farm stays? I want to know. I want to know, how are people, is it events? Is it people coming to do an activity? Is it education? How are people doing it? I want to know from you guys, because I loved hearing the synopsis of what's going on for you. Do you have you pick, or is it only a farm store? You mentioned farmers markets. I want to know, how are people doing it? I want the stories.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I come from an art background, and the phrase exit through the gift store is a really valuable one. So every time, but firstly, my farm store, I actually, I have an outside job. I've been farming full time for about 6 years, but I needed to do something else with my brain. So I'll give a little plug for the Maine Food and Beverage Education Center based in Wiscasset, whose entire goal is to support Maine food and beverage producers. So if you haven't found out about us yet, please do look us up. Our goal is to promote the exciting array of Maine food and beverage that's available. So I work outside the farm now, but everything that I do is intended to finish in the store. So we're only trading Saturdays at the moment. Like I'm open 12 till 4. I managed to get a steady, I'm outside of Damariscotta. I'm 6 minutes drive, but I'm out in a very sort of a rural area. I'm on a lake, and you can't see where I am from the road. So it's a kind of a little bit of a choose your own adventure to get to me. But we have a steady, it is a destination. It's a steady stream that we get every Saturday in that 4 hours. Again, I make the experience a good one. So I'm offering samples as soon as people come in. And if you don't do that sort of thing, it's like if I don't do that, I don't make a sale. But I engage them, I talk with them, but mostly it's through events. So I will offer a picnic. I do a community harvest where I don't pay people to harvest my cherries. They come willingly, and we throw on a big long table lunch afterwards, sort of just taking a page out of the old vineyards, and so it becomes a celebration of community. But yeah, every event, if I sell a ticket for an event, it includes a $10 coupon to be redeemed in the store. And there isn't a great deal that can be purchased in the store for $10. So, there's some stuff, so it's not dodgy or anything. But people will often buy much more than $10 worth when they come into the store. And because the events are keyed around, that era, it's just always, just think exit through the gift store.
I think hosting events is huge because whenever you, like Maine Open Farm Day, in Bethel, we do, it's called an art and ag tour. So we have a couple artists at each farm. We usually have someone come and play music. We also have our hot sauce there. We'll have tasting some chips, and people can try our salsa or hot sauce. And every time someone comes on the farm, that's an opportunity to make a sale. So I definitely see that as just getting people to your place and knowing that you're there. And then they go home, with that hot sauce, my website, they could order it online, or they see it at the farmer's market, they take it home. And I often wonder with online sales, when I'm shipping something to Texas, how did you hear about me? And it again is maybe somebody came to Open Farm Day and gave that hot sauce to somebody else. So for me, agritourism it's getting people on the farm, and then the money making part is so then I can sell them something. Yeah.
I'm curious, you said hot sauce is your main, the money maker, but you're doing all of these other things.
Well, part of it is around values, and I started as a homesteader, so I have cows and I have goats and sheep, and that's part of the lifestyle I've chosen. And so they don't make money, but that's more of a lifestyle choice. I think if we were in it to make money, we would just get rid of all the other little enterprises, host events, and sell hot sauce. But I also want to look at my quality of life, and for me, quality of life means having a small homestead and being self-sufficient. So it's all a trade-off. Also, farmers market. I think, and Common Ground Fair. Oh my gosh, this is the first year we sold at Common Ground Fair, and I was just blown away. So those are for us the ways that we make money.
Yeah, I guess we've gone through everything, and I think, I don't know if you know Caleb at Mafka, he often makes fun of me for my ridiculous ideas and the fact that I go through with them. But I think part of that is because if you don't try, you're just not going to know. And you can do all the planning in the world, and then when it comes time to doing it, you're going to have all these questions that you actually didn't answer in your planning, and you wasted all that time planning. We've tried everything. And part of it I've come to realize is your location and what the surrounding community actually wants and will dive into. We're in a weird spot where we are very rural, but to me, I don't feel like it because I can drive to Sanford still. But people in Sanford are like, oh, you live out in the boonies. And I'm like, I drive here every day. I don't understand. So figuring out that, and part of that is like our immediate community is not wealthy at all. And so in order to make money, you need people with money to spend money. So tapping into those larger communities, and that's where I think those events come in. And then the other thing that I've done a lot of is everybody is interested in farming now, which is great, and growing things and their own stuff. As I started hosting a lot of like courses and classes, I started like doing stuff with our adult ed and then doing stuff on my own. And I use the adult ed as like a low barrier entryway of they actually pay me and then they do everything for me and I just show up. And then once it was established that this was working, I start doing things on my own. And that really has helped us. And then the markets, farmer markets are a huge part of it. They're also the biggest time suck. And if you're valuing time and money, it is awful. So we're really trying to eventually get away from that and focus more on agritourism. We have 2 young kids. My husband works a full-time job, and getting people to come to us. So we're not, when I look at where I'm spending all of my time, it is not farming, is not doing all the things that I thought I would do. It is delivering things, picking things up, and going to market. So figuring out how to get rid of basically all of that and delegate things, mechanize as much as possible. Unfortunately, I would like to get away from not having to use plastic, but it's going to save us a lot of money and labor. So we got to do it.
I so hear what you say about markets. We were doing 3 farmers markets a week, and COVID arrived, and my husband decided, well, it's just time to start selling from the farm. So that's what we're doing now. And it really has changed dramatically the amount of time that we've got on the farm to do things. But I think going back to the basic question, Laurie LaChance, who at one point was a state economist, made a statement that I have repeated forever. There are no silver bullets, only silver buckshot. There is no one thing, because agriculture is so different. It's different if you live in a small town and there are 3 farms. Those 3 farms are entirely different from each other. And what works for one isn't going to work for another one. And what we all have to do as the agriculture community is to find ways to support things that support agriculture. And occasionally, one of those things might happen to be the piece of buckshot that works for us. But it is really important not to make the assumption that there is sort of this one big answer. We started doing cooking classes. We talked about that for years. We worked around, we have a commercial kitchen. We make a few products and whatever, and that has helped. But I think also going back to the idea of having the critters around, just one quick story. When I was working for Council of State Governments and traveling to farms around the whole Northeast, there's a New Hampshire farm that had started making pudding, and it's amazing pudding. And so some big company came in one day and said, we'd like to, we're going to help you. We're going to put in this great factory for you. We're going to do all this stuff, just get rid of the cows, and it's all going to be great. And the story goes that the farmer said, you don't understand. We only make pudding so we can keep the cows. So I think there's sort of a different way that many of us look at these issues. And I think that's important in terms of how we move these things forward. So
I just wanted to add something too, just because we do many things on our property. We have vacation rental, and that actually is where the bulk of our revenue comes from every year, and all through the summer season. So literally it's like 12 weeks of the year provides the majority of our income. We also host photo workshops, which also produce the next sort of largest amount of income that we have. And people are not staying on site for that, so we're supporting our local community. People are, staying at local bed and breakfasts and whatnot, and we've sort of formalized partnerships, referral partnerships with all of them. And then with the food and beverage products, because we make a shrub, the shrub is very high labor component. I'm very selective. I'm working only with 2 wholesale stores for that, because I know that those people have a very high volume of traffic, and they are attracting the kinds of customers that I think would be interested in continuing to be my customers. So I'm willing to take a lower margin on a couple of products, and it is working because they talk us up every time they sell one of our products. They say, "Oh, they're just down the road. You know, you should go and check them out." And then I get phone calls as well from New York City, you know, saying, "Hey, I've got to restock on your bitters so that we can continue to make our old fashions every night." And so some, you know, think the retail model of a loss leader. So sometimes there can be, you can afford to make a little bit less on a particular product because it's going to bring people in to actually experience more of what you're doing. So yeah, it isn't just one thing. If I was just relying on product alone, I would not be around anymore. But that's my goal, is to build that and to really look at online sales. That's the next big challenge for me. I don't want to necessarily build a wholesale business because there's too much margin to be had in direct to customer. But I know I need to develop the online business in 24. Well, I'm a photographer. But after I ran away from being a businesswoman, I became a photographer for a decade. And so we bring in big name photographers and host them, as well as teaching our own on site.
So I just wanted to comment really quickly on the money question. This is old. This is from that project in 2019. But you know, this is what the kind of thing that, you know, from a trying to understand agritourism perspective, what's working around the country. So again, like I said, it wasn't representative, so we can't extrapolate and say this is the answer. But among the people that took the survey, this is what we found using analysis. That and I might inflame some people with the female operator thing, and the reality is that we also found that female operators are more likely to be motivated not by revenue generation. And so we didn't do any further analysis on that, but we can pretty much assume that the motivations are the reason why. So we asked people why they were motivated to do agritourism, and being motivated by the social interaction, which means you're probably more likely to do events, right? Offering events and on-farm direct sales are the only things that we found among the survey responses to have a statistically significant impact, positive impact on profitability. And we published this, it's out there. I hope it's useful. I mean, the reality is, hopefully more surveys will tell us more, but yeah.
The two most positive
On-farm events and direct sales. And so that's what we know. You know, that's all we know right now. I'm hoping that this new producer survey that's coming out, we can learn more. In off-farm direct sales, when we had our dairy, going into town with coolers full of cheese, it was just horrible. Like, and it's you might make $200 on total revenue, not even profit. You know, it's just a chore. So that when we got that result, we're like, oh yeah, duh. You know, so it's just one of those things. But if it fits within your, I'm not telling you not to do it. If you're in the right spot, it fits with your business model. With dairy, it doesn't work, in my opinion, or at least for our dairy, it didn't work. And we were small scale, right? We're milking 60 goats, and you can't make that much cheese anyways. And so, yeah, I'm not encouraging you to do something or not to do something, but it's all about your location,
Silver buckshot.
your business model. Yeah,
Isn't it great?
yeah. You know, the possible partnerships that you might be able to offload some of the, you know, if you're doing an event, you don't have to do the whole event. Maybe it's a couple of farms you're coming together to do like a group event rather than just you trying to do everything that's involved in an event. So just want to put that up there as kind of a answer, sort of. Any other questions, comments?
If there are none, I would like to object to the female operator.
Oh yeah.
Without you having a detailed analysis trying to control for all factors, I think it's too bold to say.
Yeah, we didn't.
Correlated.
Well,
I'd like to see the analysis actually.
They were correlated. Yeah, I mean, and it's published. I can send you the paper. But the reality is, we can't extrapolate to a population. The data we had was not representative of the population. It's only with survey respondents. And again, We didn't do a multivariate analysis. We didn't look at latent variables that might have been impacting that. We assume that it's because that female operators in this survey had higher levels of other motivations, that they were least likely to be motivated by revenue generation.
Was it just
And
that
since revenue generation is correlated with,
That's what I was
you
gonna
know,
say.
if you're motivated by money, of course, maybe you're going to probably be more profitable because you're going to cut out things. If you're not motivated by the cows, you know, you're going to, yeah. So anyways, yes, I agree. I mean, and most of the people on that project were female. I will say that. And I was like the only male on the project, so, or maybe one or two. But yeah, so that's, yeah.
Which gets to the point, when I forward you all a link and say, hey, I don't know if this is helpful. So if I forward you all a link saying, here's a courtesy release, or, you just add the DACF Real Maine, to your safe centers list. Like, if I'm asking you to get your input into something, it's because we know it matters and we want your voices to be heard, right? I mean, Marge, you made some great points there, but the whole point here of our summit and where our work has happened at the department has been, how do we get Maine farms and businesses represented in a way that it's not just someone hearing from me, right? My farm experience is just one farm experience, and now we overlay that with my departmental experience where I hear from 300 farms a year. That's not all of Maine farms. Maybe those are people who are interested in events or a way to get technical support, but your voice is the one that really matters. So if we're asking you to do your census or respond to like a DECD survey, that's gonna be critical insight. So please do take the time, because this is perfect timing.